Hello, third grade, and welcome to lesson 6-5. In this lesson, we're going to focus on applying properties to calculate area, and we're going to be focused specifically on the distributive property. Now remember, the distributive property is when you break a number apart into smaller pieces, find those partial answers, and then put them back together. And this is a strategy we use to help us solve problems that involve bigger numbers that may be difficult for us to do at the same time, or to do all at once.
How can the area of rectangles represent the distributive property? Gina wants to separate this rectangle into two small rectangles. Will the area of the large rectangle equal the sum of the areas of the two small rectangles? Use the distributive property to break apart facts to find the product. The area of the rectangle is 56 square units. Will the total area change if the rectangle is divided into two parts?
Okay, now for this part, stop and think. If we cut this rectangle, just like when we did with the work we did with arrays, where we separated the array, is the total going to be different? Stop and think if you're adding anything extra or you're taking anything out. Now we know that if we are just dividing this or splitting it into different parts, we're not taking away any of the parts. We're not adding in any extra parts. So what do you think that does for the overall or the total area?
Separate the 8-unit side into two parts. What does this do to the rectangle?
So now that we separated the 8 into 5 and 3, we know 5 and 3 is still equal to 8. So we didn't take away anything that we started with. This just breaks it into smaller pieces. So treat these as two separate rectangles. Now this is a 7 times 5 rectangle over here, and this one is a 7 times 3 rectangle over here. When you find those partial products and you add them back together, then you're going to get the total area for your whole rectangle, and you'll see that the total area stays the same.
This creates two rectangles where there was just one before. How big are the rectangles now? One is 7 units on one side and 5 units on the other side. The second is also 7 units on one side, but 3 units on the other side. How does the area of these new rectangles compare with the area of the first rectangle? The area of the first rectangle was 7 by 8. That's equal to the sum of the areas of the other rectangles, 7 by 5 and 7 by 3. The distributive property shows how the area is calculated. What does the equation mean? The equation means that the area of the large rectangle is equal to the sum of the areas of the two small rectangles. The area is still 56 square units.
All right, let's go ahead and get into our notes and our guided practice. So again, we have our title at the top of our page, 6-5, Apply Properties, Area, and the Distributive Property. How can you use a distributive property to break apart a big shape into smaller shapes? Now over here, I have two different shapes. I had a 7 times 8 rectangle, and then I had an 8 by 6 rectangle. Let's start here first. I may not know what 7 times 8 is equal to, but I know I can break apart one of these sides. So I decided to break apart this side, the 8, into 5 and 3. So this became a 7 times 5 rectangle, and this became a 7 times 3 rectangle. Now, I didn't take anything away or put in anything extra. It's still the same original shape. I'm just counting it in smaller, easier pieces. I know 7 times 5 equals 35, and I know 7 times 3 equals 21. I also know that if I add those partial areas, I'm going to get the area for my full shape. So 35 plus 21 is going to give me 56 square units. Now, even if I didn't tell you inches or centimeters or feet or anything, you're still going to write 56 square units, whatever those units happen to be. So this one I cut from top to bottom. This one I'm going to cut across just to show you that it doesn't matter which way you cut it, you're still going to arrive at your answer. So this is an 8 by 6 rectangle. Now, if I don't know how much 8 times 6 is, I can split the 8 into 4 and 4. So this is a 4 times 6 rectangle, and this one is another 4 times 6 rectangle. I know 4 times 6 is 24, plus another 4 times 6 is 24. When I add those two partial areas together, 24 plus 24, that gives me 48 square units. So 8 times 6 is equal to 48 square units. Just like we did with arrays, you're just going to break it apart into easier pieces for you to work with. Now, we are going to take a look at another example shape over here. So if I have a 4 by 10 rectangle, and I'm not sure what the area is, so I'm going to split my 10 into 6 and 4. So this became a 4 by 6 rectangle, and this became a 4 by 4 square because this side is 4, so this side over here is still 4. Now 4 times 6 is 24 units and square units, and 4 times 4 is 16 square units. So if I add my 16 and my 24, I end up with 40 square units. So that tells me 4 times 10 is equal to 40 square units. You're just cutting it into pieces, finding the areas, and then adding them together. Now, for number 1 in your guided practice, it says describe a way to break or separate a 6 by 6 square into 2 smaller rectangles. Now, I could have cut it right here to split this 6 into 2 and 4. So it makes it a 2 by 6 and a 4 by 6. I could have split it down the middle, top to bottom, and it could have been a 6 times 3 plus another 6 times 3. So I'll go ahead and draw another one for you guys just to show you. Oops. This was still 6 by 6. I could have cut it down the middle and made it a 6 times 3. So this became 3 and 3 instead of being a full 6. And this could have become a 6 by 3. So I didn't necessarily have to cut it across this way. I could have cut it this way as well. Now, of course, when you guys are drawing, use your rulers. Helps keep all of your lines nice and straight. If you don't have a ruler at home, let me know, and I will share one of our classroom rulers with you. Our next question says, what multiplication facts represent or describe the area of the 2 smaller rectangles? So for this one, I split it into 2 by 6 and 4 by 6. So I cut it over here. So this was a 2 times 6 rectangle, and this was a 4 times 6 rectangle. 2 times 6 is 12, and 4 times 6 is 24. When I added 12 and 24 together, I got 36. So that told me that the area of my 6 by 6 square is 36 square units. For number 3, they gave me a shape, and they told me that it is 6 by 5, and that they had split the 5 side into 2 and 3. So they used a distributive property and broke the 5 apart into 2 plus 3 and asked us to finish filling in the distributive property equations. So we did 6 times 5 is equal to 6 times 2, the 2 plus 3, because we changed that 5 into 2 plus 3. We broke it apart. And then we knew when we separated out into separate parentheses, this became 6 times 2 plus 6 times 3. And then I can solve 6 times 2 is 12, 6 times 3 is 18. If I add those together, that's going to give me 30 square units. That's it for this lesson, third grade. If you have any questions for me, let me know. Otherwise, I hope you have a great day. Take care. Bye-bye.